it can't really just be tit for tat. If you say that you want the law to obey, then you should follow that same standard. And I'm kind of leaning towards saying I'm leaning more towards the no part where the arrest wasn't justified, because if you think
Mhm.
about the purpose of the International Criminal Court, it's to prosecute it's to prosecute these leaders who have an offense against another foreign country. Think
A
about
foreign
Hitler and his
country.
yeah,
So
think about Hitler
so
and his generals when they
uh
had the war. They had to be prosecuted. They should have prosecuted Putin as well because of the war and attack on Ukraine. And there was another
oh,
person that was
and why
being.
don't they do that? Why don't they do that?
They don't do that because they don't have the power. Russia is a superpower country, and this is one of the things that I think is ridiculous about the International Criminal Court. It is not a court to set up justice and establish world peace. It is a bully towards smaller countries. Okay, we're going, and we have a very important topic, at least a very important topic here in the Philippines. I know that there are a lot of overseas Filipino workers in the US, and so I don't know how many people have talked to you about this or have expressed their opinions about it.
Zero people.
No, really? Okay, so to clarify, we're talking about the arrest of former President Rodrigo Duterte by the International Criminal Court, and I have a lot of mixed feelings towards it. I'll say it up front that I'm a fan of I'm a fan of what he was trying to do, and I'm a fan of the efforts that he put in as president of the Philippines during his time. And there are some things that are coming to light right now that are concerning. The reason for his arrest was because of the claimed 30,000 extrajudicial killings during his war on drugs in the Philippines. But before I get into it, you might have I don't know how much of this have you heard, like so I know how much context I should
Yeah.
give it.
So for myself, I don't really know too much about it except for the highlights, which is that a former president of a country, the Philippines, has been arrested for something he has done during his presidency in
Mhm.
international waters. So
Mhm.
this brings about a question on how the integrity of the system, because if Duterte was that bad, they should have been able to, I guess, do the proper procedures in terms of getting the man, as well as making sure that the charges on with him is very evident. While in this
Mhm.
case, he had to be somewhere else, like outside of the Philippines, in which
Mhm.
another body of government arrested him, which makes the Philippines look pretty bad, I would say, just from that
Really?
highlight. And like
I think it makes
I
the
don't know too
ICC
much
look
about
bad.
it. Like the ICC, I'm not even too familiar with them. Um, about
Okay.
exactly is the ICC maybe just maybe like specifically more towards Asian countries, because
Yeah.
this is the first time that I've
Yeah.
kind of heard about it. Uh,
Really?
and,
Have you
and,
not
and
heard
more,
of World War Two?
oh, so they did that in World War II as
They
well, like
they
the
had
ICC.
that in World War Two. They're the court that prosecuted the generals of Hitler.
Oh, that's very interesting because sorry, when you mentioned about like Hitler and World War II, I started thinking about Argentina, in which there's a lot of let's just say white Argentinians. Which when you think,
Huh?
Argentina is in South America, and when you think South America, generally speaking, you think the people there are of like brown skin, but then there's a lot
Mm.
of light skinned people in Argentina. Well, it turns out there's a lot of people that escaped Germany, soldiers that was able to
Fled
go to
to Argentina,
Argentina,
fled to Brazil.
which
There's
is kind of
actually
like,
a Hitler restaurant in Brazil. I was
oh yeah.
told by a friend that there's a Hitler restaurant in Brazil
I
because they
mean,
got a lot
with
of
that
people who
said,
fled there.
however, it's one of those things. Like I want to make sure that we're on topic, but with that said, I want to make sure that, like, for me personally, you know, your father's sins are not yours.
Mm-hmm.
But like in this case, going back to Duterte, I mean, so what exactly were the facts? Because we got to figure out what the premises were. So if you can kind of like breaking it down for me, like hearing about this, I mean, this is very big. Like imagine, I think something similar of this that actually did happen. As funny enough, was just how, I mean, we know in 2025 the new president of the United States is President Donald J. Trump. But
Right.
funny enough, they were also trying to put him in court so that he could not
Mhm.
even attempt to be president, practically. Um,
This
and
was
so
when he
I
was
can
already sworn in as
well,
president, or
no.
before?
Before, when he was
Okay.
trying to even be the Republican nominee, there's a
Okay.
lot
Yeah, I
of
remember.
lawsuits happening. There's a lot of this is actually part of why like Donald J. Trump has, I think like 34 convictions on his record. So
Mm-hmm.
he is officially a felon, like by 34
Mm-hmm.
accounts, officially speaking. But then there's a lot of politicking there that you need to figure out the nuances of. So it
Right.
sounds to me like very parallel to what happened with Duterte, except for the fact that let's just say the bad guys won. But once again, like I want to figure out what's the premises and like what does this mean in the long term of the government.
Yeah. Okay. So let's try and break it down. And by all means, my research may not be complete. I'm just going off. I try not to rely on news outlets because
Well,
they're
you
not
should in
exactly.
some ways. In
I,
some
I
ways,
mean,
because that's their job.
yeah, but I don't rely on it. Like, I don't go heavily dependent on it because number one, I know it's very, very corrupt, and it's obviously seen. Like, for one, it says that Manila has less traffic than Davao City, which have you seen the traffic in Manila?
Oh yeah, I've lived there for a bit, and
Yeah,
I can
because
only
like
expect it to have got worse. But
yeah,
yeah,
I know. And then there's more news reports about uh, other things concerning allies of Duterte. There's about the voted impeachment against Sara Duterte, his
well,
his
sorry.
daughter, who's already the vice
Let
president.
me let me kind of get some more context in here. Isn't it after Duterte? Who's the next president? Aren't they in good terms with the former president Duterte?
I I thought so because it seemed like he was Duterte was kind of a platform, maybe, or like a way to boost his social rating among the people, and
Hmm.
therefore was one of the factors taken into account of why he was voted as president.
Okay, it's just
That's
interesting to me that like from what it looks like from the outside, it looks as though somehow or another, the current presidency has some sort of play that is
mhm,
trying to impact the former president. But if both
right.
of them were in good terms with one another, it seems as though this is more of a like a secret combination that is doing this more than anything. It's like if the
uh,
current incumbent is favorable towards Duterte, and then it seemed that though the people in general were in favor of him. It seems as though this is a very loud but powerful minority kind of
right.
doing this. But yeah, go on, fill me in
Okay,
more.
so all right, going into context, based on my research, this goes to social media posts such as Reddit and Facebook, and just gathering intel from as much people as I can, and based off of everyone's rants. So Duterte was arrested on grounds that he killed 30,000 people. Some of them were, I don't, it did not say, it just said 30,000 extrajudicial killings,
Hmm.
which I'm assuming means that these people were innocent. And it was because during his war on drugs program, he incentivized the police officers, he incentivized enforcers to have a quota to go catch, look at, or fight against these people, to look for people who use drugs, who push drugs. and they had a system where, or a quota that they had to meet at a certain time period, and the result of that was that, and this is going to be important, the result of that was that enforcers had an incentive to falsely kill people, to plant evidence, you know, plant
Yeah.
drugs in people's homes, and that
Wait, sorry.
led to,
I
yeah,
have
go
to
ahead.
interrupt you there. You mentioned that. So did the people during those raids had the right to kill the drug dealers, the drug users on the
They
spot?
were they were given the go signal for it,
Wait,
and
so
so it
just to
was a,
clarify, that's actually this is my first time hearing about it. I
yeah, okay.
assumed that what happened was people were rounded up, and then I mean, like there was a quicker judicial process to kind of
No,
measure if somebody's guilty or not. But the police officers from
just basically
from the
had
moment
the
of
go
raiding
signal.
had the go ahead
Yeah,
to kind of.
and then they'd plant the drugs.
Oh, wait. No.
That's
What
why
I
it
mean
was a
is,
big thing.
so they could kill potential, like, just to kind of steel man this idea that they could kill the people there, and then they
Without
could
due
plant the
process of
drugs
law.
after.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, because
Now now
I was
you're
trying to
seeing
draw
where,
some sort of parallel here with what's happening with the almost like the illegal immigration in the U.S.,
right.
where people are, um, the asylum cities, for example, like New York City, they're able now to get a lot more illegal immigrants
Hmm.
and people that are of like certain gang affiliations, and then
Right.
like once they have them, they'll just at a much faster judicial process. From there, they'll kind of just ship them to
Yeah.
South America. But
No,
in
that
this
was
case,
not the
this is
case. It
this is
just
4 or 5 levels above, which is they had the
hmm
right to kind of execute. Ooh, man,
hmm
that's a
hmm
tough pill to
That
swallow. That's
it's hard, right? Yeah, that's where the people were coming from, and their argument was that there were victims. There was a lot of people
of
killed without
course,
due
of
process of
course,
law, and of
of
course you'd
course.
see why people are very agitated. And I have opinions. There, and then there's the, okay, he was arrested for that. He came home from a family trip to Hong Kong, came home to the Manila airport. There he was arrested by the International Criminal Court. He was flown over to Hague and was detained there since for a month now. He's been detained for a month there. And yeah, that's the scenario that we have. That's the case that was being built against him. That's why there are people who are saying that, there are people who are saying it wasn't justified and people who are saying that it was justified. And there's a lot of loopholes to this.
Here,
There's already a
here's the
lot of flaws to the system.
yeah.
Thoughts?
I mean, let's first of all let's like throw away the rose tinted glasses, right?
Mm-hmm.
In all of these major changes, there are bound to be innocents that are going to
Right.
be a part of it. Like
Mm-hmm.
even in normal circumstances, not
Right.
100% of people in prison deserve to be there. Now there are innocents there that would happen even in a normal circumstance. Even more so, it looks to be like a war on crime kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
How I'm seeing this is, did not the people of the Philippines kind of know this was going to happen? Or like, this is so funny because I just find that there's a lot of parallels happening with the Philippine
Okay.
politics as well as the United States one. Just
Okay.
like how I see it is almost with the illegal immigration, and then in the Philippines, their war on drugs. With the
Mm-hmm.
illegal immigration, there's so many people that kind of knew what they were voting for with Donald
Right.
J. Trump and his cabinet and the people. They wanted to close the border. They wanted to ship the illegal immigrants out. That's what people
Right.
kind of knew going in. And in this
Mm-hmm.
case, isn't that similar? Did not the people of the Philippines knew that that was what he was specifically going on? From what I
Okay.
remember, Duterte himself wasn't the first one to actually campaigned for himself to be the president of the Philippines. It's actually very interesting, in which in the Philippines, like anybody can technically elect themselves to be a nominee,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
So
There's
there's a
there's
bunch of
very low
there's a bunch of
standards.
politics, yeah. And so the people of the Philippines, through the use of Facebook or Meta, they campaigned for him, and the
Right.
things that the biggest thing that he was trying to put forth was the war on drugs. Isn't
Hmm.
that the biggest thing that he campaigned for? And it's just
Hmm.
really interesting to me that that's what he campaigned for, and the people overwhelmingly voted for Duterte. And I'm not
Yeah.
excusing like those deaths per se, but rather like that's
You
what the
chose
people
this.
wanted.
Right.
That's what the people wanted. And like, the worth of a life is really important. So I don't want to, but at the same time, I want to make sure like we do live in this reality where mistakes happen, and it's not necessarily excusable, but like just understand that those things will happen
Right.
if it's gonna uh if it's gonna help more people not take those drugs, or like more families not be ruined.
Right.
I mean, it's a strong stance that the people wanted, and they kind of delivered. So what is the issue there? And I'm kind of now reminded of
Yeah.
Singapore and the way they do their drug policies, which is it
No
doesn't
tolerance.
matter who it's no tolerance. It doesn't matter if you are a U.S. citizen. You think your passport's going to save you? No, it doesn't matter. If you
Right.
have any form of drugs, or especially I think if you're like a seller of that, I think a seller of drugs is an immediate death penalty. And I believe like
Hmm.
having it maybe for like consumption use is like a broken arm or something, like or a bunch of years in prison. So not everybody that has drugs is going to be a seller, or maybe they don't even know that their drugs is actually considered a drug in Singapore. But that's where the due process
Hmm.
comes in, and that's also where you as a guest needs to figure that out first and foremost. And so
Okay.
like in the
Yeah.
case in the Philippines, that is what he was rallying on. And so now what's the issue? It seems as though the ice
The people voted
whoever
for it, and then
yes, it seems as though there's a lot of people on their high horses that are kind of saying what they're saying just to get brownie points, but not really. Like, what's the alternative? And if the alternative is like, okay, we got to round up people, we got to make sure that everybody has a due process. Of course, like that sounds great, but in the reality of it is like, and from what I remember, also like there was a time period before Duterte becomes president, or even before like he really um, increases the punishment of having drugs. Isn't that the
hmm.
case? Like I could be wrong here. So like during that time period of, let's say, mercy, then people had the chance to not sell the drugs or not do them. And then some people would say
Let
that
me address that.
yeah.
Yeah. So there was definitely periods. Okay. So to answer your question, yes, the people did vote. But I think the big problem, the big difference in between US citizens and their voting policies and the Philippine citizens is that in the US you have a good amount of people who understand that there's asking for the good thing, but then there's also like trying to be reasonable and seeing to achieve that good thing, what is the price that we have to pay? What is something that needs to happen? What are the possible unintended consequences of enforcing this kind of law? You have a lot of people debating and thinking about that and thinking further into that. In the Philippines, it is not so much talked about. People are focusing more on the good thing. That's why you have a lot of these people who not don't necessarily have the qualifications to run for senate. It's kind of embarrassing to say. the
What is the
qualification
qualifications?
the
Like,
qualifications is basically being able to read, to write, and that you're voted for the people.
mhm. Well,
It's
I
a
mean,
very low standard with high pay.
yeah, I mean, it just kind of sounds like I'm not attacking you per se. It's more like you're trying to have these high standards of what should be a senator and not. While like in the United States, we did have a president who never had any
Formal education.
formal. No, we didn't have any. We didn't like Donald J. Trump. He was a president. He was a businessman turned president
Right.
who never had a seat in even being a local governor or anything
Right.
like that. And so
And so
my question for there is like, what is the criteria of to be a senator? Because really what it should be, there's what it should be and what it is. For example, the
Mhm.
United States, we have senators like AOC, who was a bartender turned
Mhm.
senator.
Right.
So like, what's the criteria there? Uh, and so it's not necessarily. I don't think it's necessarily education or anything. I think the most important thing is that you are focused on your constituents. You are focused on what the people who voted for you want. Like your
Exactly.
focus, for example, as a governor of, let's say, a random state, you're a governor of Colorado
Mhm.
or Kansas, like more in the middle. You should be focused on what the people of Kansas want, like the people that voted for you. Like the United States, you are focused on the American people. In the Philippines, you as president are focused on the American people, or like now there's different provinces. You are
Right.
focused on what the people of Davao want or the people of Manila want. And
Right.
so, who's this group of people that, like, from what I remember, they had like a 99% vote or something. Like, it was crazy. It was pretty revolutionary that everybody wanted him in a way.
No, no, the point that I was trying to make is that there was not a lot of people. It's not too much heavily on the requirements. Although I do kind of question it in some sense, judging from. I think the United States is very lucky that you've had some people who you have a very good checks and balances system where it's not exactly thriving in the Philippines, and we don't exactly respect the Bill of Rights or enforce it in a kind of doable way. There's already a messed up system, and it's not exactly helping with lower qualifications. Whereas in the U.S., you had a very good system and a very good history of enforcing that system that led to what it is today. But the point being is that we still don't have an educated group of people, educated group of people who are
Mhm.
informed in economics and politics and understanding what the result of some actions could be, and that it is not so easy to enforce what people want to perceive as good. Like, remember the feel good, we talked about the feel good bill.
Yeah,
Everyone wants to be on the side of good. Everyone wants to have laws that have good intentions. The problem that we have is that the method of enforcing it is what people don't really think about. In the case of Duterte, there's a lot of people who want to end the war on drugs, but no one really questioned, no one really asked how that was going to be enforced. No one really talked about it.
I think people
And
did.
if you- the way that they thought about it was that they knew that there were going to be deaths and heads. They knew that heads will roll, but they didn't. I don't think a lot of them would think that a lot of due processes would be skipped. I don't think anyone ever questioned, okay, would
I
there
mean,
be due
the,
process? I think it just somehow appeared to their minds. And the other thing is that when you asked, wasn't there a period of time where he wanted these people to surrender? Yeah, during the beginning of his term, one of the first things he did is he gave a period of time where all those who were drug users and all those who sold drugs, anyone who wants to get out of the game, this is the time to get out. We will collect the drugs, we will help rehabilitate you, we'll provide all these facilities for you, and then after that it's going to be a deadline. We're going to start this whether you like it or not. There's a period of time set. There was a lot of people who wanted out and got out.
mhm.
And so so to answer your question, yeah, like there is, to say that people did vote for this, yeah. But again, I don't think a lot of people, or at least the average amount of people, the average people did not really consider what was going to happen. You said that they probably thought about it. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it just sounds to be. It sounds like you want your cake and and eat it too, right? Which is you want to be in the side of good without doing the actions of good per se.
Yeah.
And doing the actions of what relative good, let's say, of what you perceive as good, it requires action. It kind of reminds me of that idea that we need all sorts of people, and we need like executioners. Executioners being
Mm,
that they actually execute on what is said.
right.
Um, and in this case, it just sounds like there's a lot of people that want to appear good in the social medias,
Mm-hmm.
even though that is exactly what they wanted, or like kind of what they voted for. It just sounds like you wanted the result without being affiliated with who's creating those results.
Right.
And it sounds, to me personally, it sounds really fake. There's a lot of this righteous indignation,
Right.
which I'm seeing like from if drugs was that bad and the president himself got like a 99% vote for him because that was what everybody was going for. I think the majority of the Philippines actually did know what they were getting into, and they fully supported it until it became unpopular. And I think there's actually a lot of Filipinos out
Mm-hmm.
there that still support it. I think what's happening now is almost like the cancel culture here in the U.S., in which um, if what is perceived as unpopular, you don't want to say anything about, because you yourself as an individual don't want to be attacked by this mob of like of whatever that, like the secret combination, let's say.
Right.
And
Okay.
so, but in the US now, I think it's becoming kind of more apparent that people are kind of fed up with the BS. Like an example of this is the BLM movement in the United States. If you're not familiar with it, the BLM, it
Black
stands for
Lives
Black Lives
Matter. This
Matter,
became popular after
after George
the
Floyd's death.
after George Floyd's death, and then you have all these riots where people break into
Yes.
stores.
And so during that time period, you could not criticize the BLM movement
Right.
because, first of all, the name. Who's against Black lives? And
Yeah,
then
like
secondly,
you were against this. You're just a racist piece of
yeah,
piece
supposedly.
of crap.
But now looking back into it, now we're a lot more people, and I think a lot more people are being more exposed to this idea where, hey, the BLM movement, that organization specifically, most of their owners, most of the people, the leaders, they got mansions off that. What's up with that?
Hmm.
I think it's gonna be the same thing here, where I think there's a really loud minority of people screaming and like having gnashing of teeth about this issue, when I think the majority of people kind of understood that that's what it took to make sure that the Philippines doesn't just go underwater, being overrun by
Right.
drugs. And I think what needs to happen is just there needs to be more open debate about it. In particular, there needs to be an open faith. What is it? Not open faith. There needs to be a um, there needs to be an understanding from on these debates, on these talks, that when you're talking to somebody who is against, let's say, Duterte, that what you're saying, that they're gonna take it in good faith. They're not
Hmm.
gonna try to twist it into saying something that you're not saying.
Right.
Um, and with that said, it's just like I'm just thinking about the future of what this means. If Duterte was actually going to be like, I would think also as a president of the Philippines, you could not be like in
Arrested
that
by the
situation. You
ICC.
cannot be, yeah, in that situation, because moving forward, it's just very scary and kind of pathetic to think that
Right.
that can happen. Like I
Actually,
can
let me go
understand.
into that. Yeah, when you mentioned about the arrest, and when you mentioned about how this is happening to a president of a country, it's kind of confusing with the International Criminal Court being involved. One of the questions that I would ask people is, do you think that this was justified? And there's a lot of people that would say no. There's a lot of people that say yes. The people who say yes is because, yeah, he committed crimes. There was a crime against the Filipino people, and therefore he should be prosecuted for it. There's a lot of people who say no because, wait, the due process wasn't followed. The same criticism that you say that Duterte didn't follow, you're also enforcing against this person. And it can't really just be tit for tat. If you say that you want the law to obey, then you should follow that same standard. And I'm kind of leaning towards saying, I'm leaning more towards the no part, where the arrest wasn't justified, because if you think
Mhm.
about the purpose of the International Criminal Court, it's to prosecute It's to prosecute these leaders who have an offense against another foreign country. Think
A
about
foreign
Hitler and his
country.
generals. Yeah, think
So
about Hitler
so
and his generals when they
uh,
had the war. They had to be prosecuted. They should have prosecuted Putin as well because of the war and attack on Ukraine. And there was another person that was
and why don't
mentioned.
they do that? Why don't they do that?
They don't do that because they don't have the power. Russia is a superpower country, and this is one of the things that I think is ridiculous about the International Criminal Court. It is not a court to set up justice and establish world peace. It is a bully towards smaller countries, and one of
Hmm.
the reasons that I think that it was not justified for his arrest was because Duterte's crimes are against the Filipino people, then he should be prosecuted within the Philippines, not by an international court where there
Hmm.
clearly is no offense against any foreign country.
Hmm.
Not
Yeah,
one.
I mean that sounds like a lot of politician talk. Yeah, with how you mentioned it was
Right.
specifically it needs to be against foreign like people, but I mean it's a terrorism, I guess, towards the Philippine people. But that he was the president of, so he shouldn't be done in by like a foreign group. But what
Right.
does this ICC? What do they consist of? Is it like all of the major countries?
It's not. I don't think it's even the major countries. It's just like a bunch. I didn't look into the structure. I know it's by different people from different parts of the world. I didn't look into their credentials per se.
Because
I
now
just
that
I
kind
just
of makes
stopped
me
that.
think. Like, does that mean that North Korean president or
Yeah,
is
why
like
aren't they
is he
arresting the North Korean
what's
president? I'm
going
like,
on
wait,
here?
you got a
Yeah,
crimes against your
and
own
so I
people.
think this is one of those things where people aren't really saying what they like. People don't really
Hmm.
believe what they say. I think this is an obvious cue towards a former president that did his like. Never mind the intentions like of what actually happened. That's what the people voted on. And did it make the country better? Yes or no? I think the majority of Filipinos would say it did improve the country.
Right.
And it's just funny how like and now who elected those people to be part of the ICC, and now like what the credentials do they have? It's going to be a circular question on like whose fault is it. I think it's obvious that it should not have happened, or even if there were doubts, it should have been the Philippine people kind of doing it themselves, with the Philippine government doing it
Right.
themselves, and not bringing in this third party to kind of fix
It,
it for them.
yeah.
And
It
especially
just seems a
if
disrespect.
like what would happen if Duterte is actually found guilty or not guilty? If he is found guilty, I think that's gonna set a really dangerous precedent, and I think it's gonna cause even more chaos in the Philippines. It's like you're telling me people democratically voted for somebody, and he's been rallying on a particular subject that everybody wanted him to do. That's why he got
Hmm.
so many votes. And now that he did it, he did his term, he left, and he's getting punished for it. I think the Filipino people, like, they need to find the people accountable for this. That just sounds like I'm not inciting anything. Like, there needs to be accountability on this. Like, who
Right.
are the people that are calling for his, I guess, arrest? And it's fine. Like, I don't know, it's not exactly the same in the United States. I'm sure there's a difference in freedom of speech on how our the United States interpretation compared to the Philippines.
Hmm.
But I think there's a difference between freedom of speech and incitation of violence. And who are the people against Duterte, like that got him kind of arrested? Because you mentioned he was in Hong Kong, and then going back to the Philippines in the airport is how he got arrested.
Hmm. They let it happen,
Oh, who's
and
they?
to think
Who's they? Yeah. Also,
they
like I want.
so there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people who are saying that it has to do with Marcos and his president and his cabinet. They were trying to impeach the vice president, his daughter Sara Duterte,
Mhm.
and they were going after. They tried prosecuting Duterte in the Philippines, and I didn't think it worked. it did not work because he was still able to walk around freely. This
Mhm.
might be I don't know how relevant this is. It might be good for context, but he's also running for mayor in Davao City, and I think if he won the elections in Davao, which he definitely get because well, there's just a lot of supporters for him. If he was trying to run for mayor, it would have an impact on the amount of power that
Wait,
President
so
current President Marcos and his cabinet has.
that's just so weird to me. I mean, like, the different politics. It just sounds like somehow or another the current president is kind of somehow or another outing the former president.
Hmm.
But once again, I see the parallels with the United States, where Joe Biden, there's a lot of stuff that he did, but also there's like a level of pardons that you can kind of do. It's almost like with Joe Biden before he left being president, he pardoned, or he kind of he forgave, or he did like a
Hunter Biden.
prepaid pre forgave a lot of crimes. Okay, so the current president Donald J. Trump cannot go after Joe Biden's son, even though there was a lot of like the laptop theory or
Right.
a lot of different cabinet members.
Hmm.
So I'm surprised that there's not anything like that, because then there's a level of it's just like weirdness. Like for example, in the United States, once you become president, at the bare minimum, if I remember correctly, like you'll get some sort of six-figure salary from the moment after you became president. So this
Hmm.
way, we'll never ever have a president who is like dirt poor after he became president. Like, like how bad of like that looks for the country. And I would think there was some level to that in the Philippines, where it's like, yeah, you might not agree with the former president about what they did, but you can't go after like, and there might be a level of corruption on this, on depending on which way you're looking at it.
Right.
But you can't go after the president or his assets or his children, because it's
Hmm.
gonna be a bad look. Because then what's gonna happen after you? Like, what if the people then like turn after? Like, then there's a circle of it. Like there's gonna be a circle of suing and defamation. Uh, and this is why, like, Donald J. Trump, I think he can't necessarily like sue Joe Biden for his incompetence and what has happened, like leaving Afghanistan and leaving billions of dollars there. He can talk about
Okay.
it, but he can't do anything, I think, legally speaking, to Joe Biden and his constituents. He can talk about it, kind of make them look bad, but there's not like now like Joe Biden's family is going to owe billions of dollars. And there's nothing like that. Even though people might have tried it, but I think the Supreme Court is like, no, we're not going to have that. Like, we're not going to have this back and forth between. It's almost like things happened. That's the end of the line. And I would think it's the same way with Duterte. And I'm really
Benefits
surprised
of
with
a
the new
flawed
president.
system.
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
really surprised with the
It's
new presidency and how there seems to be this fierce anger towards him. But I'm not too familiar with who the enemies are and
it
who's an
just seems
ally.
to me that there's a lot of people going after him, and there's a lot of people who want him to answer to that. It's just, for me, you cannot demand justice through injustice. And if you really want to have a system that works, then first thing that you got to do is you got to follow the rule of law. It's going to be hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tedious process. There's a lot of flaws in our government system, obviously, and this happening, that the fact that we let this happen has just proved for so long how we've just had a very poor system in place. We've had someone who tried to fix the country, and I'm not saying that he didn't do any good, but I'm also not saying that the good that he did outweighs the bad. Or I'm not
Well,
trying to sugarcoat anything
I
bad
think
that he did.
I think we just gotta be upfront with it. I think from I think from my perspective, he has done more good than the potential bad that people have claimed he has done. I
Right.
think it is a general. I think drugs are bad, and he perceived it as it is bad enough that they needed to take these measures, and the people were behind him. And now that
Yeah.
people are reaping some rewards with different, now that they're living in some sort of different standards, they're able to turn around and look back and point fingers, as if this was a witch hunt, as if this
Mm.
wasn't a bad problem before. I think people just need to own up to it. Um, like, isn't it more merciful for the country that it may be like a father or a brother or sister aren't addicted to drugs, that they're going to be a burden or they're going to ruin their family's life, compared to the person that actually chose to do those things? It reminds me of Singapore's president when he was asked that question, in which, like, when a reporter, I think a British reporter, asked him how isn't it inhumane to be so harsh on the drug users, drug sellers, uh, and then he responded with the idea that isn't it like being merciful to the unjust is being is being unmerciful to the people that are following the laws. Like, you allowing those drugs to come in, that allows a family to be ruined, and then a family consists of children that they're gonna have to grow up without like a absentee father or mother. Like,
Mhm.
it's more negative towards them than the people who chose to do these things, to take the drugs or even sell them. Like, that's a choice. And I think that's just really basic. I think people are too afraid to say the most basic thing because everybody wants to be in the right side of history. And the right side of history meaning that they want all the results of what is good, but without standing up for what it took to get there.
Right.
And I'm kind of reminded of certain wars, like, um, with the Philippines. It there there was a lot of sacrifice that had to happen to for the Philippines, for example, to be freed of Japan. Like, there needs to be people accountable for this, and this is what people wanted. How can you be frustrated at that one individual? It kind of reminds me of one of Trump's sayings, where it's like, they don't hate me per se, like they hate you. I'm just in the way, and I'm kind of seeing that with Duterte, like a parallel of that, where Duterte, however, is almost like in the almost looks to be like the losing side of it, where these loud minorities actually hate the Philippine people, and it just so happens that Duterte is like the symbol, I guess, or the person that has to
Right.
be gone through first before they could actually start enacting whatever they wanted to. And I'm not exactly sure. Like, it sounds weird to me if Marcos, the current president of the Philippines, is actually part of that regime, when Duterte kind of set the precedent of what can happen. It's like there's success here now. There's less drugs. That's what people wanted. Now what is Marcus exactly campaigning for? Like, what is the thing? What is the big problem that the people rallied behind him with?
I'm actually not too sure about that because at the time that the elections happened, I was not even here. But like I see your point where it sets up a dangerous precedent. We do need to take up accountability. We do need to accept that we were the one who chose to put these people in power. It's no matter what we do. And remember how we talked about vote buying in a sense? We also voted for that. We have to before we can change, before we can hope for a better system, we have to first take into account that the reason that we've had these bad presidents in place was because we are the ones who put them in power. We were the ones who were not responsible. We were the ones who didn't want to accept that we put these people in such places. We don't even want to think about it. We were not educated in our decisions. We didn't even bother to be informed. And now I'm hoping that moving forward, learning from this lesson is that people would learn to understand and to look a little more into what these people's intentions are, and what are the consequences of it. We have an election coming up for those in Senate this upcoming May. And the
Mm.
things that I hope that people would take into account is that the people that you are putting in power will either further enhance the corruption and the detriment to the Philippine society, or it will help heal it in some way, or even patch up some of the wounds that we're already experiencing. For those who are against Duterte, I need you to think about, did you vote for this person? And did you want did you campaign and want what he was aiming for? And it's also necessary for you to take to responsibility that, yeah, I voted for that. I basically approved for that to happen. It was a sacrifice that was necessary for those. And then there are those who, and I might get a lot more beef for this because I live in Davao. For those who for those who voted for Marcos and are now going against this, who put him in power? Who, did we not think about this? We're seeing a repeat of history.
Well,
We saw how his father abused that power before, and you know some of us should have seen that it was about to happen or would have happened. Now that I think about it, now that I think about it, Duterte was the one who Ferdinand President former President Ferdinand Marcos, the same Marcos who everyone was ridiculing, he was buried somewhere else, and I think the Marcos family was grateful because Duterte approved Marcos to be buried in the site of the burial of the presidents.
mhm.
He was the one who said, "Let's." He was a president before. He deserves to be buried in that same spot where presidents are. Let's bring his body in here, and so they did. And the Marcos family was grateful for that. I'm I'm baffled that this is happening.
I think it just requires some common sense. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of nuances, but we just think about it from a logical standpoint. Drugs bad. What punishment can you do to prevent those drugs? Well, the actual extreme answer to that eventually would be death. But then,
Mhm.
generally speaking, there's like imprisonment or however
Right.
long. And so there's that level of common sense there. Uh, I am not too familiar with Marcus and what he's trying to do, like what the what the goal is in the Philippines at this point. I would have
Mhm.
honestly thought that it would be to kind of continue something that everybody wanted, which was drugs bad, so then increase the level of punishments to drugs, and then let the
Mhm.
people kind of outside of those vices kind of act for themselves. It just sounds weird that, I mean, from what you're saying, like you don't know what the agenda is there.
I
At
don't.
the very least, like we should know about at least the Philippine people first, or is it education per se? Um, I mean, I
There was
think China
there
relations is a pretty big one. Like some sort of focus that you could at least highlight number like 1, 2, and 3. I think this is why in the United States, Donald Trump's his popularity has increased because it's very obvious what he wants, and you could agree or disagree with him, but it's very at the very least the intentions are the focus on the illegal immigration, the economy. Um,
Mhm.
and just focusing on it seems as though like the Ukraine war, like being a peacemaker, like those are the three that are the highlights of what he's trying to do.
Right.
And
And that was accomplished. That happened.
or it's happening, like it's debatable, but at the very least one can say like those are the three and not like this ethereal Marcus is like what is he that he wants, what is it that he does not want.
Yeah.
um and I mean, for me personally, I'm already kind of suspicious with like family dynasties in terms of political power. The United States
Mhm.
had that. In a way, Joe Biden is part of it, where Barack Obama had his 2 terms, And then Joe Biden is in a way like Barack Obama's third term, except he's a little bit more incompetent. Like he's actually just a lot more incompetent. And then, I mean, in the Republican side, the Bush family, they're a father and son duo, which, uh, looking back now, people didn't seem to like.
Mhm.
So it just comes down to um, people owning up to what they wanted and vote for. I mean, there's nothing. I think there's a lot. I personally find it. Uh, Man, I want to make sure I say my words correctly here. I find it uncool, for lack of a more harsh word, of people not owning up to what they wanted or like what they actually think. I think that makes it a lot harder to actually have a debate on certain things, on what people actually want. And I think it's a easy no brainer about having less drugs in the Philippines, and maybe having less corruption. Oh yeah, like less corruption. I mean, that's what the United States and Doge is doing. It seems as though maybe the Philippines need some sort of that, or what it seems as
It
though
needs-
also is like maybe the federal government needs to have less power. But I need to know more specifically about the Philippines and their
Yeah, I think
provinces and how that plays out.
yeah, I think you said it well that people need to first take accountability for and accept that we are the ones who let this happen. It's there's just no one else to blame, and it's just frustrating. Right now, I'm hearing people. One of the I asked someone why the current president is the current president, and the response that I got was there were no other good candidates. I'm like, we can't we can't just say we can't just say that. It's ridiculous because we first need to say why is no one saying yes, I voted for him. No,
Well, to me,
it's ridiculous.
just to be honest, it sounds like a lot of people are roaching out, and you know, like how a cockroach kind of tries to run away when light is out there. They try to
Yeah.
like go the into the darkness. I think eventually people are gonna get fed up with whatever's gonna happen, and then they're gonna be more bold about it. Um, it kind of reminds me of uh, Serbia, in which, I mean, the people are kind of tired of the government. Be like, there's like almost, let's say Serbia has like 8 million people. There's was like 2 or 3 million people in a protest. Like that's how people are like actually into this thing that they did not like. And for more context, what happened was one of their famous railroads broke down, and it was repaired before by a Chinese company. And so the people are kind of frustrated with the government kind of contracting a third party to do it, specifically Chinese company to do it. Um, but like, in the same way that the Philippines has it. And you were mentioning, yeah, about like they're not smart enough. The Philippines has 130 million people, like, or like 100 something million people. You think there's a lack of smart people? I think there's a lot of smart people there, but we just need to give them a presence. And I think it just requires a lot more more boldness on it. With 100 million
Mm.
people, you don't think there's a lot of like there's people that can articulate what they want as well as have the means to do so. I think there's a lot of people that are smart that want to enact change. They just need more people to like they just need to say their opinions. I think actually, I think especially in this age of like even the Philippines has been using Facebook for the longest time, and that's what everybody loves to use. I think good ideas beats out bad ideas, and so a person just has the needs to have the charisma to do so and kind of just put it out there for the public. And I think it's going to be almost like a Duterte moment where whoever that is that has those good ideas, the people are going to be behind them. And if it's a bad idea, If there's a popular bad idea, how do you fight that? You don't fight that by getting that other person arrested. You fight it by the better idea winning out. And you might not agree with that better idea, if not like demonstrate it to me through your like through words. Right? Let's fight it out. Let's have the best idea win in this gladiator type combat. The best
Hmm.
ideas until like the election happens. I don't know. It just sounds like a lot of people don't want to take accountability for what is happening in in what they can do. It just sounds also like, yeah, it just sounds disgusting, to be honest. It's kind of disgusting to me how people are just not like owning up to it. Like, I am not the president, and like the Filipino people are not the president. But like, if they could at least communicate why they believe something, and I think that's what everybody just wants. And people want the transparency on it. Who exactly is targeting Duterte and why, and what's going to be happening moving forward.
For me, it's like I hope this becomes a lesson for people to better understand the dynamics of politics a little better. One of the benefits of social media is that information travels fast. And with the process that it's happening right now, people are becoming more aware like, oh shoot, now I realize why vote buying is bad. It's not because not just because it's illegal, but because we're also putting people in power that are also putting me in a situation where I constantly need vote buying. And then it's
Yeah,
also understanding, it's also like you said, like when the this idea starts to spread among the people start to realize, okay, there's certain things that I probably shouldn't have done, and now I understand politics a little better. I understand the consequences of such actions better, and hopefully it becomes a learning point. It might be a slow process because this social media thing, it hasn't been around for quite a while, but
I don't want to
maybe
say
this
that
starts
though.
to pivot it.
So I kind of disagree with it because social media heightens everything,
Mhm.
and so with that said, the information is going to be out there faster, and because of that, potentially misinformation is going to happen. But
Mhm.
at the very least, the idea is there. The planting is there, and
Right.
it's just really weird to me how the Philippines. When I think about the Philippines, you were mentioning Marcus. I remember actually being told at one point that the other Marcus, for some reason or another, during his time, the Philippines was is the richest Asian country. And I remember thinking, man, I cannot for the life of me like think of how. Um, but if it's like it happened before, it's almost like in stocks. Like at some point, it got to that evaluation. So it's still possible with more people now and better technology. It's just exactly what's happening. I just I'm just disappointed overall, especially with what my limited information of Duterte becoming president. 6 years is a good long time to do good, and then all of a sudden the government's kind of regressing back. It's like, how do you have such a home run and now? And I don't know too much about Marcus and his policies, but like the results really matter. And I'm hoping that by the end of his term, like we can see some good that happened. But I also it needs to be verified through the voice of the people.
But I think for me, like one of the things that I at least take away from this is that, before I was very hesitant in voting. I was very anti-political. I was just the person who's like, you know what? I don't care what happens in politics. Bad stuff is going to happen anyway. Now that I am older, I'm realizing the importance of having to speak out and expressing my opinion and to vote. I intend to. I can't vote this year. I can't vote this year because I'm going to be away during these elections, and I kind of regret. I kind of regret the timing of it already. But during the next possible elections, that there will be an election coming up. I do intend to register. I do intend to do my own research, and I do intend to express my own opinions, because now I'm starting to see the importance of it. Not there's an amazing quote that I remember. Do you know the movie Samurai X, the live action remake?
Sounds familiar.
So it's an anime. It's an anime. Anyway, it's an anime, and the protagonist basically he's an ex swordsman. He used to kill a lot of people, but now he has this oath not to kill, and his sword is specifically designed so that it can't
Oh,
kill people.
isn't that Rurouni Kenshin?
Rurouni Kenshin, yeah, Rurouni Kenshin. He comes, and then he looks for his blacksmith who made the original sword, and when he was replacing the handle to use his own, it says there, ingrained in the blade, uh, not for peace in my son's time, but for peace for his son's time. I do not expect that the future benefit. I do not expect to be a beneficiary of the world that I try to create and the world that I try to speak up for. But I'm hoping down the line, maybe not during my son's time, but during my son's time, my grandson's time, it will be a much better Philippines, because we need more people to make that sacrifice right now. It's the same thing as stories before. We benefit and we reap the rewards of people who sacrificed before us. I would like to be one of those people, because I
Mhm.
think a world where we do that would be able to see a world, at least in the next life, I'd be able to rest in peace and say I did my part in trying to build a better future for the next generation. And I'm very, very hopeful for it, because I'm at least taking action and doing my part right now. And I hope that there are more Filipinos out there who would take action, who would realize to express their own opinions and to engage in politics to build a better world
Oh,
for the future generation.
I think that reminds me. You know, as an individual, the greatest thing you can do is share your opinion.
Hmm.
But that is also one of the hardest things to do as an individual because of that fear of being attacked. Kind of reminds me of looking at my Facebook feed. I don't ever really see. Man, like, see, I don't like even talking about it. You know, getting in that political discussion, it makes you think about potentially what's going to happen for. What would your employer think? For example, like, are you on the right side of this? But at the same time, I think it's as long as the individual is able to articulate their thoughts, and they could be the opposite side, but as
Hmm.
long as they're able to articulate their thoughts, uh, that's okay. In that, I mean, if everybody thinks the same, the world will be so boring. But when I see in my feed, for example, I never really see anything pro President Trump. Rather, I see a lot more negativity towards him. But then at the
Hmm.
same time, like, okay, I can understand their frustration, but at the same time, like, if I'm a really good friend to the people that I see those feeds, like a true friend, a true show of love, honest from what I see is kind of being able to openly discuss what they do not or do not like, rather than people being silent on both sides of the aisle, and then the other individual is able to put out what's there, doesn't have any pushback on their ideas.
Hmm.
I think what happens is that we get in those bubbles of thought, and when we finally encounter a different way of thinking, we're kind of stumped. Either we're stumped, or like we almost kind of dehumanize that other side. Actually, this is what it kind of reminds me of. This is why it's useful for this modern day to go on a mission. And I kind of want to pivot in that because for those members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Day Saints, I think it was so useful to get into that knowledge that what you have in your like thoughts and brain like is really just so contrary to a lot of people. And then part of it is you're able to better recognize when a topic of discussion is going to be fruitful for both sides. Like with that said, like it needs to be, you need to both enter into a discussion, into a conversation with good faith uh, towards one another, and then you can kind of recognize it. And how we say it is like through the spirit, but then I think from a more scientific point of view, it's like you just got to recognize if this is going to be a fruitful conversation.
Right.
And it helps you recognize that there's other points of view out there, and then it helps you strengthen your points of view if you believe in this or that. And sometimes maybe a certain idea kind of challenges your view on that, but then that's why you gotta dig deeper, or you'll just be washed with other ideas. Sorry, I just kind of had that little tangent was when I
No,
was talking about it. It's just like, huh?
it is beautiful that you mention it. And whenever you said that, I immediately think about the Constitution. We, well, there's a lot of good things about it, but let's do that on
Which constitution are you
another
talking about?
episode. The United States
Oh, the
Constitution.
United States.
It is, so many people have praised that. Even President Oakes of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Day Saints.
Well,
He's also he's a judge, and
yeah,
he also expressed how beautiful it is. It is divine. It is very divinely inspired, is what I
yes.
would say. And I can see, as an adult and as I grow older and be more involved, I can see the benefits of it. But that's for another time. We'll do that again. Uh, and that's all from us. Hope you guys are doing well. And yeah, till next time.
Ciao.